Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Public Health and Safety Committee for June 7th, 2023. I am Latricia Vita, and I'm the chair of this committee. At this time, I will ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify a quorum for this meeting.
Councilmember Wansley.
Present.
Rainville.
Present.
Ellison.
Here.
Palmisano.
Present.
Vice Chair Payne.
Present.
Chair Vita.
Present.
There are 6 members present.
Let the record reflect that we do have a quorum. With that, the agenda for today's meeting is before us, and our first item is a public hearing to receive comments on the proposed 2023 Climate Equity Plan. Kim Havey is here to present on this item. Welcome, Mr. Havey. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chair Vito, and good afternoon, committee members. My name is Kim Havey. I use pronouns he, him, his, and I'm the Director of Sustainability in the Sustainability Healthy Homes and Environment Division in the city's Health Department. And we are here today to take comments from the public on the Climate Equity Plan. I'm joined in the audience by sustainability and health staff, plan consultants, and many others from the community who have contributed to the Climate Equity Plan. I want to sincerely thank all of those who have been involved and given their time and expertise to bring this plan forward, because it has been a 1.5-year process, but something in which it's really improved with input and support from the community. This new plan is intended to update and replace the 2013 Climate Action Plan. We are setting goals to accelerate our reduction of community-wide greenhouse gas, GHG, emissions using the science-based fair share approach consistent with the Race to Zero pledge, which calls for Minneapolis to accelerate a reduction in climate pollution to 1/3 of our current emissions by 2030 and become net zero GHG by 2050. We are also establishing a not to exceed cumulative carbon budget for between now and 2050. However, climate work is not only about reducing GHG emissions, it's also about people, and it's about improving people's lives, which is why we are leading with environmental justice in our climate equity goals, strategies, and actions. For example, we've set a goal to cut in half by 2030 the number of households that have a high energy burden over 4%. This amounts to about 10,000 Minneapolis households, of which more than 75% are people of color. We also call for a just transition to a clean energy future that includes green career workforce training opportunities and support for new green business startups. We estimate that to insulate 30,000 new homes that are under-insulated and prepare them for an electrified future, we will need at least 1,000 newly trained workers by 2030. These are just a couple of the examples of the plan's recommended actions to create a sustainable, resilient community. Just for a little background, on April 19th, after the presentation of the working draft of the Climate Equity Plan to the Public Health and Service Committee, we released the working draft for the Climate Equity Plan, and since then have received over 800 comments from our online survey. 89% of the respondents live in Minneapolis, and responses came in from every neighborhood and zip code in the city. In addition, we have received dozens of comments from our utilities, steering committee members, MN 350, Fresh Energy, other community groups, and a wide variety of community members through both in-person meetings with council members and others, and in writing through letters submitted directly to sustainability. I wanted to highlight that the proposed timeline is being adjusted for our next steps in adoption. And so the current timeline in the RCA that we have before you is that we're proposing to have the final plan completed and submitted for the July 12th Public Health and Safety Committee. And this will give us time, our staff and others, to review all the comments and make changes to the working draft, which there will be some significant changes made. At that July 12th PHS meeting, I'll present an overview of the changes that were made from the working draft based on the comments. The final Climate Equity Plan draft will be included with the RCA, so the council will have time to review the document before the PHS meeting. With that said, the plan may still not be perfect in some folks' eyes. Its intent is to be an aspirational document that establishes a pathway toward net zero GHG emissions by 2050. The adoption of the plan will be the first step towards implementation. After adoption, there will be a need for more planning, to secure funding, to train a workforce, to develop new energy systems, and to expand city staff to implement this plan. As one participant said in a community listening session, I quote, "Coming together to fight climate change has the opportunity to create a shared sense of community across racial, religious, and social boundaries." I truly believe that is true. So thank you, and I look forward to hearing the comments from the community.
Thank you for that presentation, Mr. Havey. Do any of my colleagues have questions for staff? Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Vita. I did have a couple of questions. First, regarding just transparency metrics and accountability. So the Climate Action Plan right now has minimal timelines included in bulk of its strategy proposals. I will say this seems somewhat out of alignment with other recently passed plans like our Transportation Action Plan and the Racial Equity Transit Framework. With those plans, each strategy and action steps had clear timelines around implementation. So if passed this year, this plan would align well with the Racial Equity Transportation Plan and things like that. So just wanting to know, do staff have a plan to include clear timelines for each strategy and action step in the Climate Equity Plan that complements the timelines that have already been passed by council? As I mentioned, those plans being the REF, I keep wanting to go by the acronyms, but the Racial Equity Transportation Framework, but also the Transportation Action Plan.
Chair Vital, Councilmember Wansley, we will plan to include a implementation plan for the next year that will have specific timelines, but not all strategies will have timelines. There's quite complicated strategies in there that will require more planning and also looking at what the financial needs are. That will require quite a bit of analysis as well too. So we do have plans to move forward on things, and that will be outlined within this plan, but we're not currently including a timeline work plan for all strategies in the plan.
I will just name some of the concerns around that. I know you mentioned it's complicated, but in doing research on cities like Boston, for instance, they have a robust climate action plan that does have very, elaborate strategies. But what is actually really great about theirs is they do have that implementation piece. You know who's holding the work, the timeline. I think in your draft, you mentioned, or staff has recommended, that this will take 5 years. So if we know this is going to be a 5-year process, and this is similar to other plans that we passed, the Transportation Action Plan also was a multi-year plan, and they had things broken down by year 0 through 3, year 5 through 8. So we've seen in other departments that we're able to break down these timelines based off of our, totality of time. So I do, want to note that it is possible, and I want to highlight that is the biggest piece of feedback that we have gotten around what's being proposed is not having those clear timelines, and also, most importantly, who's holding the work. That way, community members, just like what we're doing with our strategic racial equity plan, it's broken down by, we know CPAD is doing this. We know CPAD and Public Works is doing this. So again, we have reference points with other departments. I don't know if you all are consulting with them who have been able to do this and have that work be passed by this body, and would like to see that reflected in what is going to be our guiding kind of North Star around our climate action plan. And also look into Boston if you want. My office is more than willing to connect you with those folks. My next round of questions tied to racial equity and community engagement, because that's been a bulk of also concerns that my office has received. Right now, the racial equity analysis of the climate equity plan seems slightly disconnected from the priorities I've heard from residents, especially those in North Minneapolis or also in South Minneapolis. While I do, agree that there is a priority or a top concern of residents around the cost of energy bills, there's a whole variety of other priorities that is listed in the People's Equity Climate Plan around environmental solutions and concerns. So I just wanted to get a sense of how did we get to just recognizing energy bills as being kind of the top one, and having that be reflected in the REA instead of, some of the other proposals that I know community members have also offered staff.
Chair Vito and Councilmember Wansley, there's a lot to unpack there, but I will tell you that, we did, I consider some of the most intentional and extensive engagement on this plan of any plan that's been done. We've continued partnering with 10 different community organizations, had listening sessions, feedback sessions, and additional sessions with those folks. We also engaged with a number of different community organizations as well as professionals working in this field through work groups, and had a very diverse steering committee that gave feedback. So we're looking at all, and we've also included all the work planning efforts of the green zones, which is also within our sustainability office. So we really took a lot of those into consideration, and if they're, and in looking at the People's Climate and Equity Plan, which we looked at very closely, we are looking at ways that we can embed all the different equity components in there, and you'll see a lot of things, for example, on clean air and clean water. I think it's incredibly important to think about clean air these days, especially what you can do with indoor air quality in light of the forest fires that are going on right now, which currently the air toxicity in New York City is the worst of any major city in the entire country right now. New Delhi normally takes the championship on that, but yesterday New York was the worst in the entire country. So we need to break out our N95s again, because they do help stop the input of that particulate matter. But I also think it's important for us to start looking at things like air quality and ensuring clean water and accessibility, because that's not necessarily a given, but that's something that's included in this plan that hasn't been included in other plans, and is specifically focused on the rationale we're doing that is because the equity components of the plan. It's those who don't have access to the cleaner air and potentially don't have access to clean water because of lead pipes or other things, that we put a priority on that within the climate equity plan. And in response to your previous questions about timeline and responsibility, we're moving forward with some of those things, and I'll take those comments seriously into consideration. What I can tell you is that we already have worked with a wide range of departments through our work plans and others, and of course adopting plans within this one, like the Net Zero Energy Plan, the Food Vision, and the Transportation Action Plan, all have consistent times. Now, your comments from earlier today as far as implementation timeline, I do think makes some sense, and I'm going to look at that Transportation Action Plan as a way for us to really identify sort of time periods. I can't nail down exactly how every one of these will work, but I could give some generalization. I also have identified already, and will be included in our new plan, who is going to be the main responsible parties for each and every one of the strategies that are in there, and what type, whether it be a plan or a project or a pilot, are we proposing for each one of the actions. We're also going to be looking at, and we do have additional information that's going to be more direct as to what the carbon emission reductions will be by category. I know some folks, it's been partly because it hasn't been articulated well, that it's been confusing to know like what our targets are, because we don't really have a year target, we have a budget, et cetera. But we're working on those, and we'll have some additional clarifications on all of those specific targets, which I think will address a lot of the issues around specificity of who's responsible, what's the actual goal within each one of those, and how we're going to measure those. I'm hoping to really make those improvements. Those are all good suggestions.
And then you mentioned this too and I've heard this too, in working with our sustainability staff, specifically on the P card ordinance, where we're trying to include a social cost of carbon, and often hearing, yes, there's been very intentional engagement with community partners around the development of this plan, but often what I'm hearing too on the other side of things is, yes, while we met with staff, the feedback that's being provided to staff is somehow not being integrated in the actual work pieces of this plan. So in knowing that, July 12th is happening in, a couple weeks from now, and recognizing that there's been tons of public comments that has shared and reinforced that sentiment. We've even gotten letters from unions saying that when you're talking about building a green economy and a green workforce, the very workers or unions that represents the workers that would carry out the significant part of this plan has not been consulted with. So just working backwards from July 12th, how are you, looking, week by week to really bring those groups in to make sure that those concerns, that feedback is also going to be integrated as you're continuously modifying this plan?
Chair Vitale, Councilmember Wansley, this is part of the issue about where this plan, which is setting, as a goal and a policy, sustainability, we are not the program implementers. We are the organization that guides the greenhouse gas emissions and also works on environmental justice, but our goals are really set based on what we see as science-based fair share targets. And how we get there for each and every one of those programs is something that needs additional work. So including in one of those pieces is this Climate Legacy Initiative and the funding. It has not been finalized as to how the funding will work, nor is it a one-time deal with the funding. We're also looking at bringing in federal dollars. We have 2 major federal grants coming up in the fall that are for climate pollution reduction and for greenhouse gas emissions reductions that are potentially for the city of Minneapolis in the hundreds of millions of dollars. There are 20-some billion dollars each one of those plans. But we don't know the details of those plans. We don't know what exactly, they have not released how they exactly can be used, those types of things. So, but they can be applied in many cases to our building decarbonization and our housing decarbonization, so they could be part of the Climate Legacy Initiative. So within this plan, we're saying we need to do that to fully fund that, and there will be a proposal coming forward, but the details have not been worked out, nor have they been finalized. So I'm reluctant to include that in this plan because that would potentially delay the plan's adoption for months, if not longer.
I will acknowledge around the funding piece because that's really the big piece around this plan is we could put all the robust, goals on this, but if we have no mechanism that's clear to council as the purse holders of the city, how we're going to fund it, or for the public, that's the biggest monkey wrench if we don't know how we're going to fund this plan. So I know you mentioned not wanting to bring that information forward, and I've relayed those concerns directly to you all's office and the mayor's office around what is a draft of the Climate Legacy Initiative? What funding streams are we anticipating to be placed as, kind of the feeders for this? But also, is there an expectation that we're going to be matching dollars from the general fund? Because if that's the case, we need to know that if we're going into, that B. And right now, we don't have any information around that. So it would be good if there's a draft component of what this climate legacy initiative would be, and I know the public has asked for this too, around how do we fund this work? Because there's been years and years of putting these strategies together, but we don't know actually on the implementation side. You can't implement if you ain't got no money. So that's a problem. So is there a plan to at least release a tentative draft of that climate legacy initiative so we all can get a sense of how we're going to actually fully fund this work so it can be successful, especially since we're intending to pass it this year?
Chair Vitale, Councilmember Wansley, there is a plan to release the Climate Legacy Initiative proposal, but it is still undergoing financial, legal, equity review currently. So we are looking to have that very coincide with the completion or adoption of the plan in at least July, if not before. But there is not a finalized plan at this point in time with that.
And again, just saying a draft, because I think this body have seen drafted ordinances. We've seen drafted tentative contracts be shared publicly. The police contract, we did that before it was approved. So we know there's capability for staff to share those tentative drafts, as you're doing right now. What we're discussing is a draft of a plan, and we're asking for feedback. We could do the same thing on the Climate Legacy Initiative, because right now people are very concerned, are we actually going to fund this? And it would be good to assure the public that this thing that you've been saying for several months around how we're going to fund this, to actually see what that is. Because then we can say, oh, this makes sense. Or again, for this body who's having conversations around the budget, and the budget is looking bleak right now, for us to actually talk about, okay, how do we make priorities as a body so that we can reach whatever matching funds that might be needed to support the full, funding necessary to make this fund successful. So I'm still very concerned that at least there should be a commitment to release this before the body is being asked to vote on this plan. that should be shared with the public so that they know, for this body, for us to have those informed conversations. And in that, you mentioned, this is my last question, around projected costs too, because I would say that, the lack of specificity around the strategies is also very concerning. We don't know how much of any of these things are going to cost. And I know in conversations with you, in the larger sustainability department, the director, Patrick Hamlin, we've asked, what is the totality of this? And we were assured, as you shared today, that there's extensive financial analysis that's being done, all these things, and nothing has been brought forward to the surface. So again, that links to the Climate Legacy Initiative. What is the goal? What is the threshold that's going to be needed? And how can you determine that if we don't even know how much each individual strategy is going to cost? So same thing of just the lack of transparency around that. Like, that should also be included in modifications along with the timeline. Who's holding this work? Also, how much is this going to cost? That way we know for at least, this year, 2023 or 2024, 2025, how much this body is going to have to, weigh in around financial allocations. So I will just I wanted to put on the public record a lot of the concerns that was documented, as you mentioned, the 800 plus comments that was submitted, that I've shared with the Sustainability Office directly for several months now. And again, to still be in a position come June and for us to not have any more clearer information to work from in this plan is very concerning, and why I think there's a lot of concerns with the public around, are we actually doing our due diligence and taking this serious, and incorporating in a genuine level the feedback and the brilliance that exists in our community around how we actually make our city more climate friendly. So I really hope we can have those things that we just talked about before we're being asked to vote on a final plan that's going to shape how we do climate justice work for years. And that's a very firm encouragement from me to you in the Sustainability Office. But with that, I look forward to hearing what the rest of our public has to say at this hearing.
Thank you, Councilmember Wasley. Vice Chair Payne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Councilmember Wanzi touched on this, but I just wanted to dig a little deeper. Background is just, I'm looking at the equity piece of the climate equity plan, not just from, prioritizing green zones and making sure that we're addressing some of those environmental justice issues, but workforce development and wealth building. And I'm curious to what extent you've had an opportunity to work with, and also I want to just acknowledge the humility we need to have as an institution, that we're not going to solve climate action solely with the resources of this institution, and we're going to have to partner outside. So I'm curious around how you've worked with outside partners as it relates to workforce development, or how we might be able to plug in outside partners when it comes to really thinking critically about how we can be intentional about how we're deploying resources to make sure that we are doing an equitable wealth building as part of this component. And I see some of our union partners in the chambers, so I'm sure we're going to hear from them as well. But not just what have we done in the past to make sure that was being thought about, but how can we make sure that we're plugging in outside partners going forward, whether it's, today's public hearing or other points of engagement, and how we as council members can make sure that expertise is being embedded into some of the implementation as we start getting into the details. So if you just have any ideas around how we can be productive in that way.
Chair Vito, Councilmember Payne, we are right now working with McGeezy and Summit, OIC, as well as Renewable Energy Partners and the Midwest Renewable Energy Association on doing training around energy efficiency and around solar energy. We hope that we can really expand on that. We're partnering with our workforce people also within CPED and trying to really expand that component, looking at Sabathany Center. There's some specific things there that the city can take leadership on too, as well, like, for example, being able to give multi-year contracts to new businesses that would be working in the weatherization or energy efficiency sphere. And actually, just this morning, I had a conversation with the regional directors from the AmeriCorps, which does Conservation Corps, and they want to bring a new corps here called the Energy Corps, specifically working with people who are recently graduated, but maybe also some that haven't, to form a group of young people that would be going through and doing energy audits, system upgrades on buildings. It would be building off a pilot that's been quite successful in California, so looking to expand our partners there as well. We also work closely with the Center for Energy and the Environment. We have a new program right now. We partnered with other cities, as St. Louis Park, Edina, and Eden Prairie, to do an Electrify Everything, which is a guide right now online, and a guide to how you can electrify your home and do various steps. As part of that, we're also doing training and incentives with contractors so they become familiar with things like an electric air source water heater or air source heat pumps, which are now going to be more standardized, and we hope we can really spread the word about getting those installed, and we've also incentivized those and provide 0% financing for those as well too. There are also large rebates available through the federal government. So we're looking to expand our role in that. We have not spent a lot of time or money on it up to this point in time. We have one person who's really dedicated within our division, Marquita Keys, to that. And she's got, a number of different classes and things like that that are going through. One of the interesting things is that the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Energy, David Turk, was in town a couple of weeks ago and went up to the Northgate Training Center run by Renewable Energy Partners and actually went into one of the classes that Marquita she wasn't teaching it at that time, but that she coordinates and organizes. And he had an incredible experience talking with folks there who are all people of color who are looking to get into a career. And that's the kind of thing that we really want to expand. We can't do all this work, the money is part of it, but I see one of the other major constraints is we don't have employees to do it. With less than a 3% unemployment rate, we really got to dig deeper into our community to find folks who are underemployed or could benefit from this to be able to get them into these careers. So we're hoping that there's a number of different new strategies and we can use some of the government funds to give some folks some long-term opportunities. We're also looking at how we can work with the Commercial Corridor Redevelopment Fund to be able to provide additional funding for minority-owned business owners to buy their buildings and to upgrade them so that they can get as close to net zero energy as possible. And we're going to be going after a new federal grant to be able to do that as well too. But we do have to do a lot more on the training side, and that's one of those things that needs more exploration as well. But those are some of the ideas we're talking about.
That's really helpful, and I just wanted to extend an invitation to, I'll speak for myself, leverage me in my relationships as it relates to partnership outside of City Hall, and I'm sure everybody else on the dais up here has other deeper connections in the community that I think it's going to take all of us showing up for this so that we can be successful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from my colleagues? Okay, Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Vita. I just wanted to get fully clear because I think it might have got lost in my comments. Could you just share what is the Climate Legacy Initiative Fund? What is that right now?
Chair Vito, Councilmember Wansley, the Climate Legacy Initiative is looking at different funding sources, some of which we currently already use, such as the franchise fee or PCAR, to increase the amount of funding we have coming from the city to invest in the projects we have. Right now, we don't have it, it's not called a fund, but we have a 0.5% franchise fee that is actually dedicated towards sustainability work. The majority of that goes into programming and green cost share and other things. 75% or more of that goes into it now. We're hoping to be able to basically increase that amount dedicated to climate work through those two sources, plus looking for state funding, looking for federal funding, potentially looking at issuing some kinds of bonds or other things. I'm just sort of talking about what other cities have looked at and done. Of course, there's a number of different models that have been out there too that we're examining right now, such as what happened in Portland. Seattle wasn't as successful, but they had some things there. Recently, Ann Arbor just passed an increase in property taxes for their climate work. And so we're exploring all the different sort of mechanisms, including Boston's, as to how they allocated funding for this. In the case of Boston, they actually reallocated budget, general fund budget money to make that happen. Ultimately, things like the franchise fee and P-CAR do go into the into the general fund, and then because they're annual, or not annual appropriation, a ongoing appropriation, they more or less become dedicated to that particular work unless the council changes action in a particular year. So that's what we're proposing, and those are some of the sources that we're looking at. But it's about like how we adjust it, and those are the things that we're looking at: financial, equity, legal, what we can do.
And just clarify, at least the two tools that exist at the city right now, because everything else is up in the air. IRA, we don't know, what that dedication will look like, all the external government funding, the bonds process, that's going to take some time. But at least right now, it seems like franchise fees and for P-CAR, pollution control annual registration, those are the two primary funding sources right now at the city that is being looked at to do initial funding rev up for this fund if it's created. Is that correct?
Chair Vitale, Councilmember Wansley, yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and I just want to say thank you again, Director Havey, for this presentation, and thank you for acknowledging that this is not a perfect plan, and it's a working plan. It's a good thing to see so many community members who do this work here. I know you've partnered with them on input. I also want to say thanks for acknowledging some of Councilmember Wansley's concerns around where the money is going to come from and around the timeline. I've heard that too from people in Ward 4. They're concerned about, these are big plans, but how are we going to pay for it? And I've tried to share with them that there's always funds coming out for different things. So I imagine that we will jump on the bandwagon wherever there's money to get, our goals met. And so I'm confident that your department will continue to do that work and continue to be leading in this work and finding out where the money is and working with community. I think that's the most important thing for me. It feels good that you got that much feedback and from the entire city. So that means this is something that's really important to the people of Minneapolis. Thank you for acknowledging them and including their ideas and the work that they've done in this plan. We're never going to make everyone happy, right, until this is over, until we fixed it. And so I really do appreciate the work you've done in community around this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Councilmember Rainville, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a real quick question. You had an estimated cost to help insulate all the homes in Minneapolis. And what was that again? Was it $20 million or $40 million?
Chair Vitale, Councilmember Rainville, the total that was estimated, which was part of a research study from the Center for Energy and the Environment, was to do 30,000 homes would take an additional $1 billion.
Billion. Okay,
Yes.
1.2 billion. Got
Yes.
it. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Councilmember Ellison. Nope, come back.
All right.
It was almost over.
It was almost. Usually when the thank yous are getting busted out, we're wrapping up. But we got some late questions here. Apologize for that. Just back on the topic real quick of the legacy fund. Do we know how much, I guess, ballpark, what amount of money comes in through those sources on an annual basis? Or is our analysis sort of going to determine that? But at the moment, how much money are we talking about?
Chair Vitale, Councilmember Ellison, on franchise fee, the total amount of money that comes in from our, what is now about a 5% franchise fee, though it varies by the type of residential, commercial, or industrial use, is a little over $30 million. Of that, we have about 0.5% dedicated to climate, which is around $3 million. On P-CAR, I'm not quite as sure on that, but it is a few $1,000,000. All of which is going back into programming for, incentives to reduce reduce energy use in commercial buildings, but also commercial like residential buildings, as well as group buy programs for single-family houses where they come together to do solar energy.
Great. And then the burden on that is ratepayers, taxpayers. That's kind of the source of that as well. And so as we're thinking of funding sources, that's why we want to expand beyond those two sources. Is that correct?
Chair Vitale, Councilmember Ellison, yeah, that's correct. I mean, we're looking at, right now, we'd love to be able to see the franchise fee be less regressive, which right now that's all flat, and the more you have, potentially the less percentage you pay. So we're looking at some of those things, but residential currently pays at the highest level. So we're really hoping to see how we can maybe move the needle on that. But at this point in time, that's going to take some more research, and that's what we are working with a consultant firm on that as well too, to kind of look at different ways that we could go with that to help alleviate or reduce the regressiveness of the fee. Ultimately, it is paid as ratepayers or citizens. Whoever has a bill from utilities does pay into that, and includes residents and businesses and industry. And for P-card, it's a smaller universe. It's about 1,000 total users. Those who emit carbon dioxide are a much smaller subset of that, maybe under 100. So it's to start regulating around carbon dioxide emissions is because we get that information only from large emitters, and it comes from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. It's a smaller universe than the total number of folks that pay into P-CAR. So that's kind of what we're also analyzing, and who pays into that as well too.
Thank you. That's great information. And I'll just sort of join the chorus of thank yous as well. I know that it's always tough when we create policy here that affects people's lives, right? And that means that people are going to have a strong interest in making sure that we get it right. That means that, you and your team, I think, have done an incredible job of putting this together. The community's now seeing it. They're going to take that feedback. It's the job of us to be thick-skinned here and both defend your work, but also make sure that we're being responsive to community. And so just want to appreciate that. And I know that I'm excited to hear what the community has to say as well. And I'm sure that there's always ways for us to improve things like engagement and, get firmer on sources of funding, timelines, all those things. We need to do that, as Councilmember Wansley pointed out. But also just want to thank you for being receptive, you and your team putting this together and pursuing this work. And I'm excited to hear what the community has to say as well.
Thank you, Council.
Yeah.
That was a thank you, not a question. No. Go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you. I appreciate those kind words, and I just reiterate that I'm very sincere in the fact that my team really wants to have the best plan possible for the city of Minneapolis, and so we're taking all of these comments very seriously and incorporating those, knowing there's a lot of different sort of juggling we have to do to put it all together. But we're excited we've got, I think, a really good foundation here. We just need to make some changes, which we've gotten some great feedback, and I do appreciate that, so thanks.
Thank you, Director Havey. I'm going to now proceed to open the public hearing. If you haven't signed up to speak yet, please see the clerks to sign up. I'll ask you to state your name for the record and keep your comments to 2 minutes, and the clerks are keeping time for us. I'll go through the list of speakers in the order in which they registered. I can read most of the names, but if I can't, please forgive me in advance. The first person is Dan McConnell. Welcome. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council members, Dan McConnell, President of Minnesota Building Trades. Thanks for the opportunity today to come in and share our perspective on this plan. Let's start by saying, as a resident of the Longfellow neighborhood, and on behalf of the 14,000 members of the Minneapolis Building Trades and the 70,000 members of the Minnesota Building Trades, we have many that work and live in the city. We appreciate the opportunity. Personally and professionally, I support climate equity action. I'm a parent of a young child. I want her to inherit a healthy environment and a healthy economy that provides family-supporting job opportunities for all our residents. Many of the members I represent are hard at work today building out green economy infrastructure, such as the new solar array in Becker, Minnesota. I want to thank you and your staff for taking climate change seriously. I would like to say I'm excited about the document. Unfortunately, we're a little disappointed and frustrated by the fact that it's been drafted without any input from labor or the building trades. Over my career, I've often heard staff say that they have an extensive stakeholder process. Unfortunately, labor is often overlooked in that process. It's a little bit amazing that a plan that would so drastically impact the lives of working men and women and cannot be implemented without our members can make it all the way without any engagement with labor. In fact, the word union does not appear once in the 100-page document. As you're seeking funding, I would note the Biden administration has prioritized partnerships with organized labor, and in fact, the grant programs you're aware of that would assist in this work give additional points towards having labor support. We have world-class apprenticeship facilities that can be used as a resource to assist in these training of the thousands of individuals that staff have indicated would be needed. Also ask if staff have been engaged with CPED, who have expertise in workforce development. I sit on the workforce board. Would be well positioned to assist with the oversight. I heard the Director Havey mention that the Energy Corps is being talked to. I sit on the Serve Minnesota board as appointed by the governor. Would love to know how I could support that work from that perspective as well. To sum up, we support this initiative, but we have concerns about omitting any engagement with labor, as well as some specific provisions. We believe that including all stakeholders would be the best way to achieve a plan that would be effective in reaching our shared goals. As this plan is just a draft, we would respectfully ask for the opportunity to engage with staff to improve the plan, including incorporating provisions to bring individuals from underrepresented communities into union careers to achieve this work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Kevin, I can't make out the last name, with Liuna. Welcome. Will you please state your name for the record?
Thank you, Councilmember Chair and Council members. Kevin Pranis on behalf of Liuna. Council members, you know Liuna, our members build and maintain the city streets and transit infrastructure and the water and sewer and energy systems, both as city employees through Local 363 and as construction laborers represented by Local 563. Liuna has been fully engaged on climate action, from serving on the Governor's Climate Advisory Council to helping craft and pass both the 100% carbon-free standard and the Natural Gas Innovation Act to turn clean energy jobs into good jobs that are available to local workers. We support bold climate action. Like Mr. McConnell, however, we are deeply disappointed that this plan was developed without involvement or apparent concern for organized labor. We don't believe that's consistent with the way the city wants to do business. Apparently, some stakeholders have been involved for months or years, while others, like us, found out about this last week. Goals are exciting, but I think Councilmember Wansley said most of what I would say about the goals, which is the goals are very exciting, but there are not pathways that make it clear how those goals would be achieved or what it would cost, or what achievement of one goal could do to undercut achievement of other goals, or of the services, the reliability and affordability of the services that our citizens depend on. And those are important things that need to be worked out before we can commit, in my view, for the city for goals. I would also like to talk about three specific items of concern around affordability. Energy burden is about three things. It's about efficiency, cost, and income. And here, we absolutely need to invest in efficiency, but it's also about keeping costs down. And we need to figure out which pieces of the plan push costs up and how much that's going to affect affordability, as well as income. Good jobs are what make energy bills affordable. There's only so much we can do in the end to reduce energy bills compared to bringing income to people, and that's not part of this plan. I'd say second, for replacement of gas infrastructure and gas connections, it is unclear what the plan means, but if what the plan says about replacing outdated pipe suggests that a pipe somewhere in the middle of gas infrastructure starts to reach the end of life and we're just going to remove it and shut down the whole infrastructure in entire neighborhoods, that would be a big problem for the citizens of Minneapolis, and that's not clarified. And finally, on the franchise agreements with the utilities, our members and other trades work for those utilities, keeping the lights on, and we would really appreciate the chance to be part of those conversations rather than to learn after the fact what's been done to us, and then they'll explain what the labor force is. So we would ask for a broader inclusion of stakeholders. We really appreciate council members and your time and hope to work together to create a plan that's good for Minneapolis. Thank you.
Thank you. And Adam is up next. And then after Adam, there's going to be Lisa from the Seward neighborhood.
Thank you.
Welcome. Will you please state your name for the record?
Adam Hutchins. Thanks, committee. First off, thank you for letting us come and voice our concerns with the program or with the plan. I'm a lifelong Minneapolis resident. I grew up all over Minneapolis. I currently live in Councilman Payne's ward. I've been a member of Local 563 for about 18 years. I joined the laborers union after an amazing teacher at North High actually mentored me into a rewarding career in construction. Local 563 members, as you know, we live, we work in Minneapolis, and I think we've been completely left out of the draft. When it comes to the transition of our energy usage and production, I would strongly encourage that we keep in mind those folks that have been successfully and reliably keeping the lights on and our homes warm this entire time. We share in the goals to achieve affordability, equity, and climate progress, and it's hard, but we don't get there without engaging workers, essentially. So we appreciate the goals, we believe in the goals, but you have to engage workers that have been doing the work and are going to do the work in the future in that progress, in that change. I want to say thanks to Councilman Payne, who had brought up the workforce question. Currently, our membership have a 3-year apprenticeship program that's at no cost to their members. They can go there, learn all the skills needed to implement the program as you're talking about it, because all this is going to require being built out. And we already have a network, and we have a network of schools that we engage with. We have a network of community partners all over the state and in the city to bring folks in that may not have had a route into construction before. We are already building those pathways that you're hoping to achieve, and just to be left out of the conversation from the start has been disheartening. So we'd encourage that everybody gets brought to the table for the discussion going forward, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next person is, her first name is Lisa, and the president of Seward Neighborhood. I'm sorry about the last name.
Thank you, Council Member and Chair Vital. My last name has been mispronounced my entire life.
Me too.
It's Belkey.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I like it.
It does screen out telemarketers.
Thank you. Ken, start her time over, please. We've been having some chatter here. All right, thank you.
Seward Neighborhood Group is one of the oldest neighborhood groups in the city of Minneapolis, and we have been very active over our 60-plus year existence in energy reduction. And I'm specifically here to comment on the training. As a retired teacher, I've seen many young people get the message that the only way to be a useful part of society was to be a college graduate. I'm well aware of the efforts that the unions have been putting forth of free pathways for training, and I applaud Councilmember Payne and Wansley for looking at what are the pathways, and I would urge you to make sure that the unions that already have wonderful pathways into construction are being included in this. They have the resources. They know how to train the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Terry Barnes. Okay. The next person is Ron Schlater.
Also an error.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Al Swintek, you're up next. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Vital and committee members. Al Swintek with CenterPoint Energy. Thanks for the opportunity to make some comments. They were about 5 minutes long, so I'm going into the Cliff version. We've been here serving the city of Minneapolis since 1870, over 150 years. We're members of the Clean Energy Partnership. In fact, we're co-authors of the Clean Energy Partnership. And so I've got a few things about the plan that we really think have some opportunity for collaboration, and then some other areas of concern. With regard to the collaboration, first and foremost, insulating and air sealing homes is the absolutely most important thing that can be done, and we want to help with that. Helping low-income and disadvantaged residents improve the energy efficiency of their homes at no cost. We're all about that. Obviously, working on commercial and multifamily, very important. And leveraging the Clean Energy, the Natural Gas Innovation Act. With regard to the concerns, there are really four. First one is linking or attempting to link the franchise agreements with climate equity goals that neither the city or CenterPoint have the complete opportunity to really control. We think that's a concern. Changing the franchise fee in a way that our billing system cannot handle is a concern. So we want to make sure that we don't, that's addressed. With regard to the end of life, prioritizing electricity over end of life gas infrastructure, as was mentioned, we can't just take a piece of pipe out of service without impacting the entire neighborhood when that happens. And then lastly, really prioritizing the dual fuel gas in combination with an air source heat pump. We think that's a great idea. Currently, the plan sort of focuses on all electric, which we see as problematic. So Those are the main things. We want to work with the city and really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rebecca Doyle. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Vito. My name is Rebecca Doyle. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the new Director of Community Power, a Minneapolis-based energy democracy nonprofit. This climate equity plan is a good starting point. The goals are good, but it's not enough. There is no plan to implement to the scale needed to achieve these goals on time. While this plan is more robust than its 2013 predecessor, without implementation plans and accountability, it could face the same fate. That plan was a long list of actions without a clear process for how it would be carried out. As a result, few items were pursued thoroughly and with no accountability measures. Not only do we have little to show for it, but we have no one to blame but ourselves. What gets measured gets done. The plan currently states that work on the goals will begin, quote, within the next 5 years, end quote. Please add timelines to the strategies, measurable outputs, and identify who is responsible for each part of the plan to increase its likelihood of success. Mobilizing to meet the challenge of the climate emergency will take additional and dedicated funds invested in an equitable, clean energy, climate-resilient transition. The city is leading these efforts, but organizations that residents trust should be engaging the communities and neighborhoods directly. The city should lead collaboration among stakeholders, supporting neighborhood organizations, and leverage each and every opportunity for funding. As an example, the Federal Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act both require community benefit plans that prioritize investing in America's workforce, engaging communities and labor, advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and ensuring that 40% of all of those federal funds flow to disadvantaged communities. The community benefit plans must be specific, actionable, and measurable. Data must be collected and reported, showing how the benefits are directed to disadvantaged communities. Setting this standard as part of the climate equity plan will place Minneapolis far ahead of other cities competing for the same funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Leslie Jackson. Welcome.
Okay, I gotta breathe first. I really do. And I'm thankful for being here, and I'm thankful for having the time to been able to work on this plan. First of all, I'm upset because I want to make it clear, the unions and the workforce in Minneapolis, we have training in our communities. We have the summit, we have solar panel, we have marquee. I'm served 2 years consecutively on the North Side Green Zone Task Force. I'm a native Minnesotan, born and raised here. I'm the first Black environmental scientist to graduate with my degree from the north side of Minneapolis, dealing with racism. And the unions, the workforce in this city is racist. We can get trained all we want, and when we, people that look like me, or different shapes and sizes, have to deal with racism on their job, they quit. So we don't have the people that have the capacity, the unions and these construction people that say they have the opportunity for our communities don't have the backing to support people like us. I work very hard analytically from the training that I received to show everybody I was just as smart as people that don't look like me. Every day I walked through that school, I got called the N-word, but not just by the students, but by the professors. I was removed from that campus to get my degree. That's how important this work was to me, and to have the opportunity to work on this and to analytically look at it critically and put input, and the team listened to me, and took that into consideration. I want to say, I'm ashamed of you people that work in this force.
Jackson,
I want to
please
say
don't
this,
direct
I'm
your
ashamed
comments
of
to
the
other people.
residents in Minneapolis that feel excluded because it was open to the general public, all the workforce and everything, until they change their workers' mind about people that look like me, the women and people different shapes, sizes, and color hair, to work together to make this work. We will always be at odds, but they need to stop the racism in these entities to build this a stronger society and city. We're already healing from George Floyd, and this is the aftermath. Racism still is alive, and we need to come together and work together as one and stop saying the workforce when the workforce people who, the unions and that, don't support people that look like me. So I'm sorry that I'm upset. I had a different approach, but after hearing them, it hurt my core because I know the people, are working hard in their fields to train, and I know that once at the end of the rainbow, their fear is to deal with the racism, and there's no support within the system to keep people that look like us employed in this field.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
I'm sorry I'm upset.
Our next speaker is Conrad. Thank you, Conrad, and welcome.
Hello. Of course, I gave comments to the plan through that, and I would concur with many of the people that reached out to all of your offices about the need for specific timelines, specific action agendas. So not just a specific goal, but how exactly do we move towards that goal for reducing emissions and things like that. But also, it's timely, as the director said today, where New York City had the worst air quality in the entire world. So when he was comparing it to New Delhi, it was in the entire world, New York City had the worst air quality because there are a series of wildfires that are in Quebec that are directly jet streaming into New York City. And so there's nothing stopping Minneapolis from having the same fate either later this summer or next summer or any of the summers after that. And so I know there's been a lot of discussion last year about operational decisions and what we center when we make those decisions for the public realm. And I was thinking about when the director was speaking, it's a lot cheaper, it saves lives to have cheap red paint for a bus lane instead of having red skies for the rest of our lives. I think about that, and I think about my friend who has asthma, and he said yesterday, I was really glad I had my inhaler on me because I really needed it. And if they need it, then we need it too, and that's why we need to make progress on this. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kate Havlin. Welcome. I'm sorry if I messed up your last name.
No, you did not. Thank you very much,
Yay.
Madam Chair. Yes, thank you, everyone. Minneapolis will always be known as the place where George Floyd was murdered. Now we have a choice for what else we want to be known for. We can become a role model that other cities would want to follow. We can choose to fully fund a robust, major plan to deal with our intertwined major challenges of climate change and systemic inequities. Please be brave, be bold. Please commit to move our city forward by fully funding the 10-year climate equity plan. And begin the work now. We need serious money and serious detailed timelines. If we have that, we have a chance in the next decade that our city, all the residents, regardless of race and income and zip code, all of us have a better chance to live in a greener, more equitable city. That's the only way it'll happen, all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lee Samuelson.
Yeah, Chair Vitaw, members of the committee, Lee Samuelson. Right after the 2013 Minneapolis Energy Options campaign, I organized a series of community education events to build energy democracy teams in all 13 wards, a vision which MN 350 gratefully accomplished years later. Since then, I've watched us fall way short of our 2013 plan's 75% goals for whole house energy efficiency retrofits because Excel and Centerpoint have not offered us the field-tested version of inclusive financing, despite several years of us asking them to. I personally collected over 1,000 signatures to Excel for it and watched Centerpoint refused to agree to last year's pilot project without getting a minimum desired profit. But unless this plan also drives a hard bargain with Xcel to speed up in-boundary solar interconnections, we'll similarly miss our 20% distributed solar goal. And in the Climate Equity Plan work group, we discussed network geothermal and generating energy by tapping into existing water mains. I'd like to see a feasibility study on whether CenterPoint would provide these services or whether the city of Minneapolis could better do so by forming our own municipal heating and cooling utility. And I want the city to pass the biggest, boldest plan this year so that we can find out what Xcel and CenterPoint will say yes or no to next year. And in 2017, I watched the council pass $2.5 to $3 million new franchise fee dollars for climate equity without a peep of opposition, but it has been very hard to find out if those dollars are going toward the intended purpose of helping the energy cost burden. That teaches us a valuable lesson for now. While I do not want the basic framework of the plan to be endlessly delayed by budget negotiations, it needs to have in it a process for transparency and accountability. And for that, I have some suggested amendments and points for the council to consider printed out right here. Should I hand them to the clerk?
Yes, please hand them to the
Okay,
clerk.
yes.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kevin Laredo. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, council members. It's Kevin Corrado.
Oh, see, sorry.
It's okay. I'm going to talk a little bit differently than what you've heard so far. I'm a retired hospital social worker, and one of my responsibilities as a hospital social worker was to report any reasonable suspicion of abuse and neglect. I worked on a burn unit at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I saw a lot of situations where children were neglected or potentially abused, and I had to make those reports to the Child Protection Services. You are entrusted to be members of this Committee of Public Health and Safety, and although you may not be mandatory reporters, I think you have a profound obligation to make the public be aware of all of the threats to our public safety right now that climate crisis poses. So my challenge to you is to craft a vision for the future now and have a bold plan. Recognize that it's complicated and it's not going to be perfect, but you have a profound responsibility to craft it and to rally your strength and your values so that we as citizens of Minneapolis, everyone here, can feel proud that you are really paying attention to the legacy of this city. In the headlines today, there was a story about the mayor excited about a new initiative for Nicollet Mall. I would like to pose to you a new headlines that I'd like to see in the coming months. And the headline goes like this: a bold climate and equity plan is the future legacy of Minneapolis. Mayor Fry endorses a bold vision for climate and equity. The mayor, with the support of all council members and a very dedicated climate activist, announced support of a comprehensive and bold climate and equity plan. The existential public health crisis of a looming climate disaster can no longer be ignored. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Eliana Johnson. Okay, this person's not in here. If they come in, we'll call them back. Oh, wait. Here we go. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, council members. My name is Eliana Lippold Johnson. I live in Linden Hills in Ward 13. I'm about 8 months pregnant, and I've wanted to be out in my garden this week, and instead I've been inside because of the air quality warnings. I'm in a WhatsApp group with about 75 other neighborhood moms, and the conversation this week has turned to, does anyone have a book, a children's book, picture book about air quality or climate change? And I think it's really critical, you know, we're sitting here with the air looking like it does outside, that we pass a plan that has better accountability measures and timelines and dedicated funding. And it would be absolute insanity not to include those things in this plan. It's a big plan that we're only revising every 10 years. By that time, this baby will be in elementary school, and I want to make sure that I can talk to the neighbors and families in my group and say, like, this is something big and good that Minneapolis is doing. And without a clear funding source and a clear timeline, then it would be devastating and really disappointing. So I urge you to make sure that this plan includes a clear timeline and a clear funding source. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sean G. Welcome. Could you please state your name for the record?
Sure. Hello, Chair Vita, Sean Grishevsky, Ward 9, and we've been meeting a lot with Councilmember Chavez on these things. And I'm very excited about all of your talks on external partnerships. So, Councilmember Payne and Wansley, I totally back you up on generating a bunch of momentum from beyond the city. We have this amazing amount of new federal money coming through. For example, Pete Wyckoff, who was in Senator Tina Smith's office, is now working for Department of Commerce to help us figure out how to get this money out the door. Hennepin County, their board passed 8-0 their climate action plans, so we really need to lean on Hennepin County for their resources, especially related to job training. And then concern is that the neighborhood groups are kind of trying to figure out how to stay alive when the funding is going away. So how do we maintain outreach capacity to reach neighbors for home weatherization and other things? So trying to figure out the community engagement part of it. So on my feedback here, key point is having annual report meetings on accountability for maintaining implementation, something similar to the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee where you can figure out where the money is going and what it's getting done. Another aspect is collaborative implementation. So for every strategy, you can bring together people who will help write the plan, the nonprofits, the advocates, and the unions to help implement each strategy. And then, for example, underneath green economy and workforce, it would be good to know how much work are we getting done now, how much work we want to get done, how many contractors do we need, how many workers do we need. So for each aspect of trees, green infrastructure, weatherization, solar, you can figure out the gaps to be able to meet the workforce needs. And then finally, I live right next to East Phillips, and the city has some great new programs on air quality monitoring. So let's maintain accountability for action on air quality, especially indoor healthy home retrofits. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michelle Hensley, and that's speaker number 14. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. For the past year and a half, I've been helping MN 350 organize in Ward 2 and Ward 9. My boundaries shifted, but I've been listening to folks in those wards, and the main thing I hear is that everyone is worried that the city of Minneapolis isn't going to step up in the big, bold way it needs to, that they'll talk a nice game like they always do, but especially they're not going to step up with the money. I've read several independent estimates of what it would cost to insulate, electrify, clean transportation, all the things included in the plan over the next 10 years, setting aside the federal money, something like $3.86 billion. I don't know how state funding fits into that, but that's a lot of money. But I can also tell you that there are large entities in this city that have been emitting greenhouse gases for years without having to pay any fees like they have to pay for other kinds of pollution that they create. There's a source of money right there. And I hope that, I think our fervent wish is that you and the city of Minneapolis will be bold enough to stand up to those entities that can afford to pay and get the money that we need in a dedicated fund to make sure this actually happens over the next 10 years. It's a crisis, and you guys have to come up with the money. Everyone I've talked to is afraid that the city of Minneapolis won't, and I really, really hope you will. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kelsey Murphy, speaker number 15. Welcome. Will you please state your name for the record?
Right. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey Murphy. I am a volunteer with MN350, and I'm basically here to explain why this plan is so important to me. I am 27 years old. Climate change is something that I have to factor into all my plans for the future. I often discuss with friends if we should move further north, if life quality would be better up there because of climate change, because, you know, I've read that from the IPCC reports that Minnesota will become hotter, we'll have worse summers, we'll have more wildfires, we'll have crop failures, things like that. So we discuss as friends, should we go north? Do we even bother saving for retirement? Because what's that going to mean in 60 years or whatever when we retire? So I just wanted to come here and reiterate what a real fear this is for people in my generation. And just to really push everyone here, the Sustainability Department, the council, everyone involved to do as much as they possibly can to prevent that future from being, you know, kind of the terror that I've been told about. It gives me a lot of hope knowing that people are here discussing it and trying to make it good, but I'd really like us to push as hard as we can to make it as good as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is L.B. Benson, speaker number 16. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is L.B. Benson. I live in Ward 1. I've been a volunteer with MN350, organizing on behalf of the People's Climate and Equity Plan. Thanks so much to Councilmember Payne for meeting with us. I want to echo a lot of the things that have been said already in terms of being concerned about the timeline of this plan. Within the next 5 to 10 years isn't quickly enough to take action. And we do need specificity in this timeline. One of the other things that I really want to highlight is a lot of the federal funds and other funds that are available for fighting climate change right now are really focused on homeowners as opposed to renters. And I think we have a real opportunity in Minneapolis to upgrade larger rental properties as a part of this plan. And in order to do that, we're really going to need money and staff at the city to implement these plans. So really look forward to seeing more timelines and more details about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is number 17, Howie Dotson. Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. I was born in Minneapolis General. I'm a child of Minneapolis. I've been a soldier and a missionary. I've been to 37 countries. I think like a global citizen. The average Minnesotan knows more about celebrity gossip than what is happening in our world, what the climate change is doing to people in Somalia, the 6 million who are facing starvation. So the next time you drive by Cedar Riverside and you see Little Mogadishu, I want you to think about how climate change is impacting brothers and sisters in Africa, in the 2/3 world. 1 Timothy 8, the love of money is the root of all evil. That's been a moral compass for too many. Your retirement investment portfolios, if you're investing in any fossil fuel, as part of your policies, I encourage you to divest from fossil fuels because every life matters. In the Quran and the Talmud, there's a verse, to save one life is if you saved all of humanity. Every human being is a child of God, and there are people who are drowning out because of our climate change. We are an interconnected world. When I was in Ukraine in January, I saw the trucks loading up on grain, going to Somalia. So I want us to think about climate change and how it impacts every child of God at every longitude and every latitude. Because Minneapolis is a beautiful rainbow of humanity, and we have Somali families who are connected to those folks who are facing starvation right now. So your policies are interconnected to what is happening around the world.
Thank you. Our next speaker is number 18, Lee Schaefer. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Council, Chair, and members, for allowing us this opportunity to speak to you. I'm speaking on behalf of not only my children and grandchildren, but future generations who will follow us. We are at a point in our human history where, frankly, we face the eradication of the human race. It is our responsibility to do all we can to stop that from happening. Personally, I've invested $100,000. I'm a retired pastor. $100,000 of my own money to get an EV, electric charging station, solar panels, but I can only do so much. I did it to understand what it takes to do what we can to make a difference so that future generations will simply have the opportunity to exist. I beg you, urge you, to find the funding and dedicate that funding in order to move forward with this plan that has eloquent wording, but as has been pointed out, has very little teeth. There's not a whole lot there about timelines, about funding. That takes political courage, and honestly, it's not just Republican or Democrats or independents. It's all of us will be affected by climate change. As the gentleman eloquently pointed out, those not just in Africa, but on our borders to the south. We get all upset about all those migrants coming here and angry that they're doing what they're doing. They're doing it because of climate change in part. It's up to us to act. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, number 19, is Lizette Vega. Welcome. And can you please state your name for the record?
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Lizeth Vega y tengo a mi compañera Fernanda que ella me va a interpretar, bueno, les va a interpretar. Yo soy una líder de la Iglesia Luterana San Pablo, que está en Phillips, en el 9º distrito de Minneapolis, zona verde sur.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Lizeth Vega, and for the record, interpreting is Fernanda Acosta. I am a leader with St. Paul St. Pablo's Lutheran Church in the 9th Ward of Minneapolis, Southside Green Zone.
Fuimos consultados y la comunidad latina estuvo presente y participó en estas consultas con la ciudad de Minneapolis.
We were consulted for this plan, and the Latino community was present and participated in the listening sessions with the city of Minneapolis.
Muchos en esta comunidad somos hispanohablantes y recibimos apoyo de intérpretes durante las consultas y nos prometieron que el producto final estaría disponible en nuestro propio idioma.
A lot of us in this community are monolingual Spanish speakers, and we received support through interpretation during the consults and listening sessions, and we were promised that the final product would be available in our language.
Es importante que a lo largo del periodo de implementación nuestras comunidades sean tomadas en cuenta por medio de seguimientos y materiales en los idiomas adecuados, ya que somos de los más afectados por injusticias ambientales y segregación ocupacional.
It's really important that throughout the implementation period, communities like ours are kept in mind and listened to through follow-ups and materials available in the appropriate languages, seeing as we're some of the most affected by environmental injustices and occupational segregation.
Así que seguiremos esperando los resultados para entenderlos mejor.
So we look forward to having those materials available and continuing to work with you on this.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Thank
Our
you so
next-
much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Todd Pearson. Is Todd here? Okay. Number 21. Welcome.
My name is Todd Pearson. I live in Willard Hay neighborhood and Ward 5. I am a member, or I'm a volunteer with MN 350 and with Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light. I just returned from a gathering up at the headwaters with Line 3 Native people who are continuing to fight the injustices of Line 3 and Enbridge's rape of the countryside up there. And I bring that up because I realize that as a citizen of Minneapolis, what we do here impacts the entire state and the world. I think that the plan that is on the table is a good plan, and I will reiterate what everybody said, which is it needs more teeth, it needs timelines, and it needs funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jesse Peterson Brandt, and then we'll have Katie Fritz after Jesse. Welcome.
Thank you, Jesse Peterson Brandt. I'm a Minneapolis resident in Ward 12. Thank you, council members, for taking up this motion. I don't have a ton to say other than climate change is incredibly scary, I think, to people my age who have been living with it and will continue to live with it. You know, it's not just about removing carbon emissions from the city of Minneapolis. Other people have already spoken to, you know, the worldwide effects of this, the worldwide effects of you know, petrochemical extraction. So I do really just want to say I support this plan and that there's really no such thing as overinvesting in climate change mitigation. There's no such thing as going too fast. So I hope that you will approve this plan and improve on it and continue to invest in this. You know, and I'll just say one thing. Somebody mentioned earlier. There's no place for fossil gas in a carbon-free future. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kent Fritz, and Doug Johnson is following. I don't see either one of them. Anne Harveau. Okay. Brett Smith. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Vital, members of the council. My name is Brett Smith. I live in the 13th Ward, and I'm here because I'm a grandfather of 4 wonderful grandchildren that I love deeply, and I know that they will grow up in the world that we are helping to create. And we can either create a world that is not on fire all the time and that does not face the inequities that exist in Minneapolis. This plan gives us a great opportunity to address both of those critical problems, the problems of climate and the problems of inequity and injustice. And it's a possible win for both of those things. The one problem, I have a lot of problems, and many of them have been mentioned. I love the ambitious goals and the visions of this plan. What bothers me the most, I guess, is that I don't see a clear link between the programs and actions and the reductions in CO2 emissions. That is, you can't, as I read the plan, I can't tell which of the programs gets the biggest bang for the buck. I can't tell which of the programs actually lead us to the goal that we're trying to achieve. It feels a little bit like a black box to me. We have a goal, we have some programs, but I don't see the linkages. So I hope that you will take that into consideration. You'll pass a strong as possible plan, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mary Kosuth, and then followed by Marcus Mills. I want to remind folks that if you intend to speak, to please check in with the clerks. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mary, Ward 8. Thank you for this minute. I've been teaching environmental science courses at Dunwoody College for 20 years, and each year I ask my students to complete a carbon footprint activity. The activity gives students an opportunity to reflect on their environmental impact as individuals. Most are surprised to learn that we would need 5 to 9 planet Earths to live if everyone on the planet lived as they lived. Myself, I live in a family of 4. We have 1,100 square foot home. I bike commute 3 seasons out of the year. It's not an extravagant lifestyle, and yet I would need 3.5 Earths to live if everyone lived like I did. This exercise shows us that we as individuals don't have meaningful control over the impact on our planet. In my experience, in student conversations over the last 2 decades, reactions are very consistent. They don't feel like they have control over the kinds of transportation they take, the kinds of appliances they have, where their electricity comes from, how insulated their homes are. So I just want to bring this perspective from my classroom. Humbly, I see that residents are concerned about climate change and they want to live sustainably, but they feel trapped in circumstances that they just don't have control over. So we need policy so that that more people can live in line with their values. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Our next speaker is Marcus Mills, number 28. I know I saw him somewhere around here. We'll give him a few more seconds.
Madam Chair, you might just reiterate the name again. I saw several people in the overflow space, and I think Mr. Mills was among them.
Okay, Marcus Mills is our next speaker. There were a few other people, Doug Johnson, that we didn't get to, and Ann. If they're here, or maybe in the overflow room, please come in. Thank you. There he is. Welcome. Will you please state your name for the record?
My name is Marcus Mills from Ward 3. Live in the Marcy Homes neighborhood. So, y'all know me. I've come before you myriad times for many reasons, but energy, environment, and justice are the most frequent. As one who's dedicated my efforts to help build this plan, I am proud of much of it and grateful to our partners in sustainability for their tireless work. But there are a few things that we need to build up. We need to ensure that the conversion from gas systems to full-fledged electrification, heat pumps, and district geothermal systems, which will provide extensive work for the very union workers currently propping up the gas industry, and many, many more are brought to fruition. If we generate an inclusive financing system, we can swiftly accelerate our just transition to at no cost to the city. And while our Just Transition Fund will provide the engine to drive us forward to achieving the rest of our goals. Minnesota just finished showing the country what it's like to lead towards a future we can eventually be proud of. It's high time we in Minneapolis stepped up and showed Minnesota how it's done. We can do that by ensuring our vision of climate and equity, building it with a firm foundation of dedicated funding. And when I say dedicated funding, I mean creating a dedicated fund rather than just resigning revenue to the general fund for ongoing allocation. I will remind the council that in 2017, the council, in partnership with Community Power, raised the utility franchise fee, as Director Havey mentioned, to raise $2.5 million a year for programs devised by the Energy Vision Advisory Committee to lower residents' bills, lower energy use, and raise energy efficiency. That very year's budget process scattered the funding throughout the enterprise. And in recent years, sustainability itself has been relegated to a subdivision of the health department. This does not lend confidence to the future councils, that future councils will be inclined to leave the necessary funds where they are needed to meet the needs of our goals and this plan. I know we can do this properly, but we need to be resigned to doing it in the right way from the beginning. That has been presented by many of the people in this room, and we ask you to follow their lead. Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no one else wishing to speak on this item, I'll now close the public hearing. I'd like to thank everyone that came and spoke today in public testimony, and there's no further action required on this item. Thank you all again for coming. There are 4 items on today's consent agenda. Item 2 is authorizing a site agreement with Reading and Math, Inc. to host Public Health Corps members for 2023 and 2024. Item 3 is approving the appointment of Health Commissioner Damone Chaplin as the city's designated representative to the State Community Health Services Advisory Committee and Deputy Commissioner Heidi Ritchie as the alternate representative. And item 4 is authorizing additional contracts with organizations for the Partnership Engagement Fund. Item 5 is approving the Neighborhood Revitalization Program Policy Board district boundaries and election procedures. I understand from conversations with staff that this item needs further work, so I'll move to refer this item back to staff. Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion on these items? Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could we pull number 4 out of the consent just for some questions after we do the rest?
Just go ahead and ask the questions.
Sure. My questions are about the performance engagement, the Partnership Engagement Fund. I know that there were 19 projects that were brought forward a couple cycles ago, May 17th, and these are an additional 12 projects. So I'm just curious, are there more that are coming, and do we know, because I believe there were a lot of total projects submitted. Could you give us just a sense of that?
Chair, Council Member, thank you for the question. My name is Stephen Gallagher. I'm the Neighborhoods Program Manager for Neighborhood and Community Relations. There's a total of $1 million in the Partnership Engagement Fund, and we're working through all of the applications, and then they go through a legal review process, and then we're bringing them here. Some of that legal review is taking a little bit more time because they were done in different languages, so we're translating the languages, putting them into the application, then having legal review. Last year, what we did is we brought the projects forward here first, and then we had the legal team go over it. We felt like this was a better way to do it, to have everything done completely. We are expecting one more to come through at the next committee meeting with 8 more projects, and that would be the final one.
If I may.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, so these projects were vetted by the City Attorney's Office?
Yes.
And so all of them move forward with the City Attorney's Office approval, and did they all go through the normal RFP process and follow city guidelines, albeit with some help, it sounds like?
Chair, Council Member, we work with procurement, legal department, and then through the NCR's policies on putting this out. So this is the 3rd year, I believe. So we've kind of learned along the way about how to make this process better for both the city and our partners, so there's less confusion, and that's the reason why we're kind of going through here. So it does go through legal review, it does go through community review, and then our staff review as well.
If I, just a couple more questions. How are these additional funds get reflected in overall neighborhood funding in some increasing ways, right? We've made accommodation for equity differences with the Equitable Engagement Fund. Now it looks like we're doubling some groups' net impact funding while others receive nothing. So I'm curious, are there not projects that have been submitted, or do you see it as us maybe overcorrecting? How are we reconciling this? For example, a few neighborhoods this year, the Bryn Mawr neighborhood is still under $12,000, but this, just looking, the Whittier neighborhood has 6 projects now in this fund that are around $272,000. And, it's hard enough for us to spend money when we have it. How are we are we looking to balance that out geographically, or is that just happenstance?
So there, Chair, Council Member, I'll have 2 kind of answers for this. One is that we do matchmaking events with neighborhood organizations and the CBOs that are applying. Those neighborhoods and CBOs come together to have the application. So at a higher functioning neighborhood like Whittier that has multiple staff, they're able to have more infrastructure to assist these CBO organizations. And what we're finding is more neighborhoods are coming online as we go down, or as we continue this process. So we are hopeful, and I believe it'll happen, is that more neighborhoods as we go down the road will come on to assist some other CBOs. And we tried to look at distribution in different communities, not necessarily neighborhoods, but communities, and spread out through the city. And then those neighborhoods who have really stepped up to help out the CBOs in the Partnership Engagement Fund, those are the ones that are in the contract. In future years, more neighborhoods will come in and be a partner with these. A lot of it has to do with infrastructure.
I hope so. That's kind of my point, is that smaller neighborhoods lack the capacity to then even look to do these kinds of opportunities. So this fund is budgeted at over $1 million next year. And it looks like it will ultimately benefit 13 groups, while the base funding for neighborhoods across the whole city is quite a bit less than that. It's a little over $800,000, and it benefits over 80 neighborhoods. So to me, I just want to point out that seems a little bit out of balance. We have a lot of neighborhood groups that don't receive enough neighborhood funding to be sustainable over time. And I hope that we're going to see this imbalance analyzed more in the upcoming legislative directive. So that's kind of my point. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Vital. Actually, Council Vice President raised this, and I did want to use this as an opportunity to remind her and the rest of this body that, we did pass a legislative directive back in December based off of questions around pathways for maintaining equity within how we support our neighborhood associations. I know Council Vice President Palmisano was the lead author on that directive, as well as Councilmember Payne and I was co-authors on it alongside with Councilmember Johnson and Councilmember Goodman. So from my understanding, there is work to get that robust or comprehensive analysis. And I'm looking at the legislative directive right now. It's supposed to come back June 15th. And also one of the components in which you, really focus your inquiry on, Council Vice President, is point 2 of this legislative directive. We ask staff to report, the results, effectiveness, and financial analysis of the 3 neighborhood funding programs. That includes the Equitable Engagement Fund, Partnership Engagement Fund, and Collaboration and Shared Resources Fund. So I'm really excited to be able to dive deeper into that. Conversations around neighborhood funding. It seems that June 15th. And we did name that, we wanted that information ahead of budget or the mayor's budget in August, so that we can have conversations around what does it look like to discuss, neighborhood funding in regards to that. So I'm really glad that this body was proactive back in December in thinking of this, and really looking forward to, the results of that legislative directive. And it sounds like actually 2 weeks. So yeah.
Chair, Councilmember, I believe I said it would be closer to in July than it will June 15th, because there were some delays starting out. But we're doing some good work. And just on that piece, we've reached out to Kira to see what they could bring for looking at what the metrics are. Can they describe this as a success, or how to change the program to be more of a success? So we wanted to have someone outside look at this program, as well as our own internal pieces, internal staff within the city. So it's going to be a 2-pronged approach when we're looking at this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to next call on the clerk to talk about item 5. We're going to be sending it back to staff. So if you want to just give an overview, Mr. Clerk, that'd be great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for the body and for the members of the public here, the proposal that was submitted to the body for consideration around the membership of the Neighborhood Revitalization Policy Board has been previously acted on by the City Council on 2 different occasions. There were resolutions adopted expressing a policy intent to expand the membership of that body from a total of 4 representatives of neighborhood groups to, I believe, a total of 8 seats reserved for neighborhood organizations. Unfortunately, the difficulty we have are, I'll blame the clerks and the attorneys here. We tend to be a little bit nerdy on paperwork. And the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department, following up on those resolutions, attempted to implement that intention expressed by the body. But the Neighborhood Revitalization Program, as you know, and the policy board was created subsequent to state legislation. And we codified through ordinances the creation of the policy board with the reauthorization of, I'll call it phase 2, and Mr. Gallagher can correct all my mistakes that I'm about to make. That was when the proposal came forward that community representation on that board, specifically through neighborhoods, should be strengthened and increased, came forward. And a resolution was passed, and I believe there was a thought at the time that that was sufficient to increase the membership through that. But there's a conflict in terms of the hierarchy of sort of the way these acts, formal acts, work together from statute to ordinance and resolution. And the resolution would, of course, create a conflict with the ordinance, which stands and says there may only be 4. And so in order to bring that forward, we're asking you to refer that back to staff so that we can get the right paperwork and get the right intentionality around that. So it would be bringing forward an ordinance to amend the code. We can only change the code by ordinance, not resolution. So I think there was a drafting error in the code that said we could change it by resolution. We really need to do that by ordinance. That's going to take a little bit longer period of time for us to get that forward. And then also to bring forward the, I think I'll call it the district map. Am I correct, Mr. Gallagher? The district map outlining those seats and the election procedures via a resolution. Which is a policy for the enterprise, not merely a motion as it was framed up. And so I think there's a little bit more intentionality and formality that needs to be done in the documentation to reflect council's policy intention. Not to say that those intentions weren't previously captured by acts of the body, but that we as staff failed to bring those forward in the right manner. So we're simply asking you to refer that back to us so we can bring it forward in the right way. I apologize for that slip of the correct paperwork and form, and apologize to Mr. Gallagher for not getting him that advice in advance.
Thank you, Clerk Carl. I will move approval of the consent agenda, including referring back item 5 to staff. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. That carries, and the consent agenda is approved. Thank you all so much, and thank you, Clerk, for the information. The next item is receiving and filing a presentation on the response to the opioid epidemic. Here to kick off the presentation is Deputy Commissioner Heidi Ritchie. Welcome. Hold on one second. You have a question, Vice Chair Payne?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I had a conversation with the commissioner earlier this week around the content of the presentation, and we were having a discussion around some of the changes that happened at the state legislature. And we were debating whether or not it'd be beneficial to delay this presentation in light of some of those changes at the state legislature. I was just curious if there's in this brief period of time that since I've had that conversation, was some of that content able to be woven into what's going to be presented today, or should we revisit some of what we're going to see today in light of maybe some deeper analysis of some of those changes that happened at the state? I was just curious if you had a perspective on this, because I'd be happy to make a motion to delay if that would be beneficial to have a more complete representation of the information.
Okay, Chair Vita, Vice Chair Payne, and members of the committee. I think we did talk a little bit about the omnibus bill that was passed at the state. So we know that there's some things included that we still need some further analyzation of. But we did talk with the city attorney's office. We're comfortable going forward with the presentation as we have it now, which is really focused on this legislative directive. But as you'll see at the end of the presentation, part of the next step is to come back to council and present a broader presentation on our work on opioid response.
Perfect.
So we hope we'll have more details on what the state changes are at that time.
Yeah,
But
my
we do-
exact question was going to be, did you get a chance to talk to the city attorney, and should we revisit this topic once
Yep,
we
I
have
think
that
we're ready
deeper
to go now,
analysis?
but we
Okay,
will
great.
come back. We will come back at another date to talk more broadly about our work.
Great, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
We can get started now.
Excellent. Well, my name is Heidi Ritchie, and I'm the Deputy Commissioner of the Minneapolis Health Department. And I just want to say thank you to the committee for allowing my team, the opioid response team, and myself to come and present and respond to the staff direction. It's Staff Direction 2022-00698, which was prior to our legislative directives, so it's still the old holdover of a staff directive. This directive was authored by Council Member Payne. The directive was to have the health department explore pathways for supporting a medication-assisted therapy facility and report back with options and recommendations to the Public Health and Safety Committee. I will note that we had conversations with the author, and we kind of broadened that a little bit just because we wanted to make sure that there was a good understanding of both the legal and political, and then also the scientific environment around just some of the different types of facilities that there are out there that address opioid use disorder. So the statement of the problem, and you can go in many neighborhoods in the city and see this anecdotally for yourself, but some numbers, the rate of fatal opioid overdoses has increased by 130% in Minneapolis between 2017 and 2021. In 2021, the rate for fatal overdoses in Minneapolis was 4.6 per 10,000 residents. The rate for opioid deaths among American Indian residents, which was 82.3 per 10,000, and among Black residents, 10.9 per 10,000 in 2021, was the equivalent of 29.4 and 3.9 times higher than the rate among white residents, which was 22.8 per 10,000 respectively. Inpatient and outpatient visits of Minneapolis residents due to non-fatal opioid overdoses increased by 20% between 2019 and 2021. I'm going to skip this one and go to the next one. We're going to start out with some terminology and definitions. Opioid use disorder is a biological disease characterized by neurochemical changes to the brain, which is worse with fentanyl, such as dependence, tolerance, severe cravings, and extreme withdrawal syndrome when discontinued without medication. Harm reduction is defined as the range of intentional public health practices and policies designed to decrease stigma around addiction and reduce negative social and/or physical consequences associated with substance use disorder. Examples include syringe exchange and naloxone education and distribution. Medication-assisted treatment are medications which help normalize brain chemistry, such as buprenorphine and methadone, or block euphoric effects, such as naltrexone, of people diagnosed with opioid use disorder, or OUD. This is also referred to as medications for opioid use disorder, or MOUD, or medication for addiction treatment, or MAT. We have also heard it referred to as medication-assisted therapy, or medication-assisted treatment. So those terms are used interchangeably. Treatment is defined as the process for helping someone struggling with addiction, which includes detoxification, medication, withdrawal management, stabilization, and recovery. Comprehensive services including counseling, case management, peer support, group support, and residential or inpatient or outpatient. Buprenorphine, with the brand name of Suboxone, is a medication that's been approved to treat opioid dependence through MAT. Naloxone, also brand name Narcan, is a medication that rapidly reverses opioid overdoses. It is not treatment for OUD. Naltrexone, or Vivitrol, is a medication approved to treat both alcohol use disorder and OUD. Generally, naltrexone helps curb cravings and also addresses the euphoria. Treatment induction sites are defined as places where those suffering from OUD can enter into treatment while being supported and accompanying through the initial process of withdrawal. Safe injection sites or supervised injection sites or overdose prevention sites, all terms used interchangeably for the purpose of this presentation, are places where people who use injectable opioids can do so without fear of overdose, prosecution, or exposure to infectious diseases. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to the city's attorney's office. Up at the dais, Attorney Bert Osborne will talk a little bit about the legal landscape.
Thank you, Deputy Director. And Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Councilmember Payne, Mr. Chair, you pointed out an interesting development, which is, not just the state of Minnesota, but also the federal government seems to be, signaling intent to explore the efficacy of some of what's in this presentation, what's being proposed, and I think science backs it up. It's incumbent upon me and my office to remind the committee that, I'll just read the first sentence from the Third Circuit opinion that says, though the opioid crisis may call for innovative solutions, local innovations may not break federal law. I think a safe injection site right now, I think the DOJ in very recent history did take legal action against the organization Safe House for proposing to operate a safe injection site. So that is the state of the law. That's a barrier to some of this initiative. But I understand, like, we're in a situation where things are in flux. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
At this time, I'm going to bring up Dr. Diziwe Nataba. He is an academic emergency physician with over 20 years of experience working in large urban teaching hospitals and responding to several public health emergencies. He's currently completing a Bush Fellowship with the focus on improving outcomes and reducing local disparities in opioid use disorder. He has his Master's of Public Health from Harvard and his Doctor of Medicine from the Oregon Health and Science University. We partner closely with, we refer to him as Dr. D. We partner closely with him on a number of projects that are related to our opioid mitigation work. So he's going to take us through some of the neuroscience and biology around what the opioids and these drugs do to the brain and to the body, and how we know some of the best practices for combating that based on that science. So I will bring up Dr. D now.
Thank you, and welcome, Doctor. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Really appreciate the opportunity to participate in this process. I'll be talking about some of the evidence along with the biological basis of disease for opioid use disorder, and then talk through some of the recommendations for best practices that we've been reviewing. But just in graphic form, we see that the rate of overdose deaths are increasing year after year. In order to best understand this problem, I think we need to start with the biological basis of disease, the patient perspectives, in order to understand the behavior and some of the trend lines that we're seeing. So this simplified graphic of brain activity helps me best explain this. If we think about normal brain activity with that gray stripe, the middle gray stripe, most of us live our lives within that normal brain activity. The darker gray stripe up top is the brain exposed to synthetic opioids or other illicit stimulants, and the blue stripe on the bottom reflects some of the changes in the brain when folks are exposed to opioids over time. Things like tolerance, dependence, are neurochemical and anatomical changes, alterations in the brain that we need to contend with and we need to understand as we address this problem. So let's say on a normal day, our levels of dopamine and endorphin, these are hormones in the brain, are right about midpoint or maybe 50% in that normal or in that middle gray stripe. Without any exposure to synthetic opioids, activity of dopamine and endorphins can dial up. If you can think of a dimmer switch, if a regular day is about 50%, someone who is having the best day of their lives, maybe childbirth or their favorite meal, that dials up to close to 100% in that middle gray stripe in terms of chemicals like endorphin and dopamine. On a bad day, we might be around 40, 30%. If the brain is exposed to these synthetic opioids, that dial goes up tenfold, so maybe 1,000% or more, depending on the potency of the opioids. The effect on the brain, if someone comes into the emergency room and they have a bone sticking out of their leg, opioids are a great intervention to reduce that pain, almost an instant relief of pain. If the brain is not experiencing pain like that, then the opioids act in a different part of the brain with an unnatural release of dopamine, and that's the euphoria or the high that people talk about. That's associated with other effects on the brain like elation, calm. So if someone is living a life of chronic stress, maybe poverty, discrimination, or childhood adverse events, and their brain is all of a sudden exposed to this pill that provides euphoria, calm, that's an unnatural state, but it helps me understand why patients might reach for that in the first place. The problem is, over time, within a matter of days or even a week, that effect starts to wear off and the brain starts to adjust in the sense that the changes lead to less and less of a euphoric high and more of a tolerance and a dependence. So the natural progression of disease, very quickly, we start to see patients who are dependent on that synthetic opioid in their brain in order to not feel these horrible withdrawal states. Within a matter of months, people are no longer trying to get high, they're just trying to escape that horrible withdrawal state. Cravings that are compared to someone who's gone without water for a few days, that level of craving. So this is the patient perspective and experience that we're seeing in the emergency room and that we need to understand, I think, to have effective interventions. So the fentanyl in our supply, the fentanyl supply in our communities, illicit fentanyl, looks like counterfeit pills. It's packaged oftentimes rainbow fentanyl, marketed towards children. It's disguised in something that looks not as harmful as it actually is. So you can see when those early decision makings around, am I going to reach for a pill? They may not even know that there's fentanyl in there, or it might be disguised as something else. And we can see that with the counterfeit pills nowadays, one pill can kill. This is what happened to Prince back in 2016. He thought he was taking a couple of Vicodin. He was actually contaminated with fentanyl, and 2 pills were enough for a fatal overdose in that sense. We just have a lot higher supply of fentanyl circulating nowadays, or these counterfeit contaminated pills. The interdiction rates from law enforcement removing these pills off of the street are going up. Back in 2018, I think there was 300,000 pills nationwide that were seized by law enforcement. A few short years later, that number has gone up to 10 million seized by law enforcement. So the supply of this most profitable commodity ever invented continues to go up through the roof. And this data for me suggests that we're not going to interdict our way out of this. We need a more comprehensive, biologically based response. When it comes to the disparities in death data that were introduced earlier, this is another way of looking at it in graphic form. So Minneapolis residents, broken down by different ethnicities. The orange line skyrocketing upwards is our Native American population. That rate of death is now 30 times higher than the general population. For Black Minneapolitans, that number is now 2.5 times higher. These death disparities are also reflected in the increasing supply. And our interventions around naloxone and Narcan and harm reduction are very important tools, but they're not sufficient. I view naloxone as a Band-Aid, a short-term damage control, but the issue is it doesn't break that cycle of disease with the brain activity and the changes like tolerance and dependence that these patients are struggling with every day. So we can see increasing in non-fatal overdoses, largely attributable to all the great work that's being done in Narcan education and distribution, but that's not a successful response if we're not also reducing the number of funerals, the fatalities, mortalities year upon year. Next slide. One of the challenges that we're seeing with naloxone is when people receive naloxone rescue, let's say they've overdosed, they've stopped breathing, they receive naloxone either in the emergency department or the paramedics or a community member, because the naloxone kicks them into the full depths of withdrawal, that patient is now, unless they are offered treatment medications like buprenorphine, that patient is now at very high risk of subsequent death. In fact, this data here shows the blue bars are number of fatalities. On the vertical axis, that's number of fatalities. On the horizontal axis, that's days since naloxone rescue. Here it's an emergency department setting, so they're able to track how do these folks do after they get the naloxone. And you can see it's the first 72 hours after that rescue that's the highest risk of overdose death, highest lifetime risk of overdose death for that patient. And this is if they don't receive treatment on the heels of that naloxone rescue. So this is one of the limitations of our current nationwide strategies in pushing naloxone without having the treatment options available. This graph for me represents, I think, one of the biggest gaps in our opioid response, in that 90% or more of people who struggle with this condition aren't accessing treatment. Those numbers are even lower for opioid use disorder and even lower for some of our highest risk populations like Indigenous and Black Minneapolitans. This is countrywide data, also true in the US, probably higher with counties with higher income inequality and whatnot. So this definitely reflects kind of, I think, the biggest challenge that we have locally. This graph reflects the, on the left-hand side, the various harms of opioid use. We've talked about overdose, we talk about infections a lot. Social isolation, this includes things like family separation, if parents get involved in CPS, custody issues, or just the general detachment from society if they lose their gainful employment or maybe drop out of school. Oftentimes these folks become unsheltered. Very isolating disease with broad implications like that. The acquisitive crime that's associated with financing an expensive habit like this can be $50, $100 more a day habit. I think also seen on a societal level increasing, but I don't think that connection is necessarily always made between untreated disease and the variety of harms like this, not to mention incarceration. On the right-hand column are the options that we have on both the policy and the clinical level to intervene and respond to this escalating crisis. The prevention efforts, the harm reduction efforts, I think are important and improving over time, but treatment, highlighted in yellow, from my perspective, doesn't get nearly enough attention or visibility. When you look at the different options available to reducing overdose death, this was done in an article published in JAMA back in February of 2020, right before the pandemic took over, all publicity. By far the most effective way to reduce overdose deaths is through medications like buprenorphine. Methadone is another older option, also a very important drug. But this is comparison to either having no treatment or some of the conventional treatment programs we have, counseling, group support, residential, inpatient, outpatient. The most effective way to reducing overdoses, we know, is through medication for this biological disease. The benefits of treatment.
There's a question.
Yes.
Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really quick on the using Narcan for overdose, and then people waking up in withdrawal immediately. Is it common practice and common protocol to start with the medication-assisted therapy if you're in the right settings, or is there a disconnect between that?
Yeah, Chair, member, thank you for pointing that out. There is a very big disconnect with that, but that's changing. I know the hospital I work in, and I know there's another major paramedic ambulance agency in the metro area that's now moving in that direction to provide naloxone plus buprenorphine. I would say another disconnect is in the education and the distribution of the Narcan. I don't know there's enough visibility paid towards the high risk after administration. So whether or not people want and agree to the medication after the naloxone rescue, they at a minimum should be aware of the high risk that they have in that first 72 hours or so.
Thank you. I just want to say quickly that we have to be done by 3:45 because we have a charter commission meeting that's scheduled, and if we need to continue this, we will do so. There's a question from Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would not want to shortchange the doctor, so I'm open if we have to continue this. This is very educational for me, and I thank you for coming. I do have a question, though. What is your treatment is obviously the most effective way, but people do not volunteer for treatment all the time. So what is your opinion of mandatory treatment versus volunteer treatment?
It has to be volunteer, in my opinion, and I think just supported by the evidence. In fact, when people are coerced, maybe a family member is bringing them in, saying, giving them the ultimatum. Especially if it's treatment without medication, not all treatment philosophies include medication, but they might actually do worse if they relapse, and they weren't necessarily either supported or educated or offered the options of treatment. So I think that used to happen more often. I think it's happening less. But I think there's potential to do more harm than good is what I believe.
Okay, let me ask this a different way. What if someone was committing a lot of crimes because they're addicted? Should treatment then be part of a sentence? Would that help them as opposed to, slap on the wrist and let them back out on the streets again and they continue their addictions?
Yeah, if it's crime to acquire the substance because they have this biological change in their brain, then I think absolutely part of that rehabilitation needs to be offering the medication, the treatment, the effective treatments for that person. If it's other levels of crime, I don't know that I can comment on that.
No, I was thinking of the crimes of, it's a really fancy word. What do you call it? Crime of?
Acquisitive crime.
Acquisitive.
Is
so
not
you're
my
acquiring?
term, but yes. So it's an expensive habit.
Is that stealing? Is that a good?
It could be any number of things. Oftentimes, exploitation, trafficking is a major component of, the harms and I would say crime. So it's a broad-reaching type of. Sometimes it's opportunistic crime. Sometimes it's distribution. There are numbers. I had the opportunity to hear from a undercover narcotics officer in St. Paul. Who spent a year basically trading, catalytic converters for drugs or money, or actually, no, sorry, drugs and guns is what he was trading it for. But from his perspective, a lot of that type of opportunistic crime was happening in the setting of drugs and untreated addiction.
Yeah. Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Wansley has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I will note, since you did say we have to be done by 3:45, I just want to put a motion on the table to postpone to our next PHS meeting. I have subsequent questions that I would actually like to send ahead or before, because I would love to know in Minneapolis the breakdown of treatment centers and also the breakdown of that of inpatient to outpatient, so we can get a sense of really what options are available. Because from my understanding, there's also been closures that has happened in the city. So it'd be good to know, those type of things. So I at least want to put that motion on the table, because this does feel like a much longer conversation, and we want to dig deep into this because you expressed this is pretty major. So,
And
making a motion.
Councilmember Wansley, I definitely agree with moving forward to the next meeting, but Dr. D is not going to be here, I'm told by our deputy commissioner for in 2 weeks.
Chair, I can make it work.
We like that. Thank you. All right. So Councilmember Wansley's motion is on the floor to postpone until the next cycle. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries, and we'll see you next cycle. Thank you so much for being patient with us. And seeing no further business before us, I will call this meeting adjourned.
We're Minnesotans. We're Minnesotans.
We're Minnesotans.
We're the change. We're the change. We're the change.
We're the change.
Hey, did you know that the City of Minneapolis minimum wage has increased? The minimum wage for small businesses with 100